School district consolidation. Can our local school districts survive without it? I'm Adam Chuzak. In the past 10 years, several school referendums appeared on our ballot, each of which would have substantially raised our property taxes. Off the top of my head, I can count 9 separate referendums from 3 different school districts. 4 of them for District 234, aka Ridgewood, 3 for District 79, Penoyer, and 2 for District 80, Giles and Lee. The stated reasons these school districts asked for more money varied, but in reality, they all revolved around spending too much money in specific areas, usually payroll, and then crying out for more money when they couldn't balance their budget. There are other secondary contributing factors, for example, state-imposed unfunded mandates or increases in enrollment, but generally labor costs were the biggest driver of the referendums. We're already paying a boatload of property tax for education, and in the end, none of these districts made a convincing argument to voters as to why we should pay even more. When I look at my property tax bill, I see the biggest chunks of it going to school districts. The Village of Norridge municipal government's tax levy has been increasing by double digits each of the past few years, but school districts still remain the bulk of local property taxes. Let's focus on that word districts, as in school districts plural. In Norridge and Harwood Heights, we have no less than 4 separate school districts servicing something like 20 village blocks. If you include the areas served by District 207, that makes 5 districts. Each of these districts have their own budget, their own employees, leadership, not all of it good, and more importantly, their own property tax levy. Of these 4 local districts, 3 of them have but a single school. The primary source of income for K through 8 and high schools in Illinois is local property taxes. There are some state and federal dollars, but the overwhelming majority remains local property taxes. There has been much criticism over the amount of money the state government spends on education, deservedly so. Part of the problem is a significant amount of money earmarked for education doesn't actually make it into the classroom. The state of Illinois spends billions on education, but billions of that is going to pensions for retirees. $4.8 billion as of the current fiscal year. According to a financial analysis done by the Illinois Policy Institute, a nonprofit who advocates for prudent fiscal policies, as much as 36% of state education funding is being diverted into pensions. State politicians have chosen not to take meaningful action to address the pension crisis. Pensions are guaranteed by the state constitution, and that's often used as an excuse by politicians to do nothing. If they did want to fix the pension problems, however, politicians could put a constitutional amendment on the ballot to address it. They have refused. Many of these pensioners are receiving 6 figures a year in pension salary, with raises compounded every year, no matter what inflation is, or even during times of deflation. Some pension recipients stand to receive millions of dollars in retirement, many times more than they ever paid into the system. It is not sustainable. I and others have been keeping an eye on the financials of our local school districts, especially the grade schools, and the findings are not encouraging. They are on a path to fiscal ruin. Some of them, like District 80 and 79, are already there. As education funds were diverted to pensions and less money making it to the schools, local school districts didn't make corresponding cuts until it was too late. What are the alternatives if these school boards can't, or won't, make the changes necessary to balance their budgets? In the past 2 years, we have been talking about what could be the holy grail of proper school funding, school district consolidation. For more on this subject, I'm going to turn to my guest, George Ballas. Welcome, George.
Adam, thanks for having me.
For those that don't know you, can you give an introduction of yourself?
I've been a Norridge resident for the last 7 years. I have been an active volunteer of Norridge Park, District 80 schools, both Giles and Lee, and their respective PTA and PTOs. I've also been a strong advocate for school reform for the last almost 4 years. I am the editor of Fix Norridge School District 80, which is a Facebook page, and the website called norridgespotlight.com.
George, I think you're the closest thing we have to a consolidation expert in Norridge. What have you been up to the past year and a half?
I don't know that I would call myself an expert. I have done a tremendous amount of research on this topic over the last 14 months. I have, especially during that time, I've spoken to many educators, many school board presidents throughout the state. I've spoken to many consultants and many superintendents. Superintendents that have attempted this process with a win and superintendents that have attempted this process and have failed. Nevertheless, it's their experience that I was looking to grasp information from, and those conversations were very, very informative. I would call myself well-informed, but I wouldn't call myself an expert.
I think you're definitely an authority on the subject, hence why I wanted to get your insight on this topic. So for people who are not familiar with the concept, can you explain exactly what consolidation entails? Specifically, what is to be consolidated?
Okay, so what is consolidation? Consolidation works like this. It's the idea of merging all of the schools into one consolidated district. In this particular case, instead of 3 school districts here in Norridge, which is 79 for Penoyer, 80 for Lee and Giles, and 234 for Ridgewood, we would be considering, instead of 3 superintendents, 3 budgets, 3 different boards, 3 different sets of contracts with literally probably almost the same vendors, it would be consolidated, per se, into one district, one board, one superintendent, one budget, and one set of contracts, etc., etc., etc. Now, there are, at least the way how the Illinois Board of Education is structured, a process like this, there are over 20 ways to consolidate here in Illinois. That's just one way. I'm basically giving you the Reader's Digest version of what that would entail. Again, there's other forms. There's annexation. There's merging. There's a whole slew of different opportunities out there. Again, up to 20. This is just one aspect of it.
So you have economies of scale. The bigger district would be able to command a greater savings, for example?
Possibly. If it was structured properly and managed properly, absolutely. Definitely better than the way it is today.
Because at this point, we have quite a few single school districts, and we have multiple superintendents. So in this case, there would be potentially one superintendent for all of the schools, and then one principal, and potentially only one IT person, accountant, et cetera, stuff like that.
You're talking about per school. Well, there would be multiple principals. There would be a principal for each school. Right. Yes.
For each school. Right. You broached this subject about a year ago with District 79, Penoyer, and you asked them, would you potentially be willing to join a conversation about consolidation? And the board president, Michael Malusa, said, he pretty much dismissed it outright. He said it wouldn't save any money. What do you have to say about that?
Well, that District 79 school board meeting was a year ago. During this entire time, a lot has changed. Now, Malusa's argument is that there's no truth that consolidation is a fix. Their particular idea in District 79 is to push for a tax increase and put a referendum on the ballot. Now, we already know what's already happened since that last time. They lost. And I would think just the way how the actual voting body is here in Norridge, it would continue to fail that way. Now, I think a lot is going on in District 79 that we may not know. He may have a lot of things at stake there, which would be a hindrance for him to consider consolidation. It would destroy what they've built, at least in his eyes, is something sacred. At the end of the day, consolidation is the one remedy that would fix everything. And yes, his number one fear is that if he were to merge with District 80 and 234, that they would be deemed redundant and Penoyer would close. And most likely, it probably would.
My understanding, however, is that District 80 approached them about sharing a superintendent, and they also declined to discuss that.
Well, they did. From what I'm told, I'm not privy to the conversation or how that actually came down, but during this past year, when the superintendent of District 80 resigned, and as of July 1st, we have a new superintendent here, which is just an interim one for the time being. That superintendent, our previous superintendent, probably created enough waves within the community where there was a bad taste in everyone's mouth about dealing with that particular individual. I'm not going to get into names or anything like that, but
yeah, I agree with you.
He's an interesting character, which did some good for this community, did some bad, horrible disposition and attitude. However, in the long run, the situation that we're in now is better than it was before he walked in the door, but could it have been done better is the key. And if we had a consolidated district, would that be even better? So again, there's multiple things to explore here.
So when you say better, it's because District 80 made considerable reductions to its budget to the point where it was brought more or less under its revenue, so a balanced budget.
That is correct. And I believe that moving forward, the plan is to maintain that. I've actually spoken to and asked in the last finance meeting that existed of one of the experts that the board uses with regards to reviewing and managing our budget, our actual budget for this District 80. And his answer specifically was, at least moving forward, we have a plan. If we don't have a plan or a proper plan, we're doomed to fail. He alluded to the fact that there was no proper plan which got us in the mess that we're in today. And as long as we are not, I'm referring to District 80 now,
right,
specifically counting on or depending on tax dollars only to fix the district and or maintain the district's financial, pulse moving forward, as long as we're not doing that and we have a proper plan to control costs, etc., moving forward, we're doing the right thing. This way we could be, his opinion was 33% of budget is where they need to be. And that's healthy. This way we shouldn't have to consider always looking for a referendum, et cetera, et cetera.
Especially when your electorate is not too keen to raise their taxes even further than they are now. So at this point we would say the motivations for consolidation have to do with financial reasons, correct?
Specifically for financial reasons. And I'm referring to the issues of District 80 and 234, which pretty much have similar problems, and 79, all have come to the point where either right now 79 is in deficit reduction.
Yes, they're now in deficit spending, correct? And they're doing some building work.
And although 234 has gone through their motions in the past, District 80 has just completed that process. So we are at least on the right path moving forward. As far as what's it going to look like further down the line, I think those reports still have to come out of the next few school board meetings so we can determine the fate.
So one of the concerns that's been brought up by others is, at least from using District 79 as an example, there's a lot of parents there that might be supportive of consolidation, but they don't want to have a situation where their kid is going to have to go to Ridgewood instead of Maine South, District 207. Will they have to switch in the event there's a consolidation? Will they have to switch their high school over to Ridgewood?
I'm going to refer back to that meeting I had, I believe it was about a year ago at 79, when I was looked at straight into the eyes by both superintendent and the school board president, some very cold, staring eyes. No.
Yeah, I remember that. I was there.
You were there. No, we're not looking to consolidate. And at the end of that meeting, I was specifically asked, I said, are you looking to remove students that were living in Norridge that were part of the 207 district and moving them to 234 Ridgewood? People moved to that specific part of Norridge because their children would be going to high school in 207.
Right. That's what's brought up to me as a concern when we talk about consolidation in that area.
That doesn't have to happen. In other words, it can be written where that aspect isn't even addressed. And we're only talking about students. In other words, the high school lines would not be rewritten. We're just talking about grammar school, K through 8.
About a year ago, I think it was last September, when we had that meeting with Mark Kleisner at the library, he indicated that the process to change high schools is actually not normally part of the district consolidation process.
It is not. And you would have to actually have a separate referendum specifically if you really wanted to address that topic. You also could create a referendum or a study that would include both, but his fear was that would sound quite ambiguous if you put that on a ballot, and you would confuse people, and that tends not to allow something like that to pass. So, number one, it makes sense that the people in the community don't want to move their children to a different high school district, and number two, we're not looking to mislead anybody. We're looking for the greater good of at least K through 8 at this point.